Arts and Sciences and the American Indian Writing Committee, thank you so much for coming out. This is a nice full room. We are very, very pleased to have you all here. To start things off, we're going to have a blessing, and I will now introduce Takala Clifford.
Takala Clifford much of the Lord, Shopper Hashako me, Unshlapo, Le Idoape, Shkanshka, Owaka, Ninktacha, Lecha Muktelo, Unshimalayo, Indicino, Kashawa Kanka, Wokla Kanka, Ichichapo. My name is Takala Clifford. For those of you that didn't understand what I said, I just asked for all the powers as far as my people are understanding to be called to this place, and ask that a blessing be given upon everybody here, that our voices may touch the next generation in a good way, and that we may leave a good energy behind. Now, before I turn the mic over to the rest of the situation here and let everybody get started, I want to go ahead and sing a song in a traditional manner real quick, because this is the way the Lakota people do this. Folks.
My name is John Schaffner. I'm chairman of the Television Academy. I'm grateful that this evening that we are all gathered together to talk about this thing. It's something that's close to my heart. I was raised in western Montana. The Native American has always been part of my family's family from when I was a child. So I think it's something that we're not aware of the way we should be here sometimes in the entertainment business. And hopefully tonight's conversation will lead to more discussion about this amongst our industry colleagues. I think the one thing that I ask everyone to take out of this as they leave tonight is something that we must do is to go and tell our friends about what we experienced and about the conversation. Because if we just talk about it amongst ourselves, it doesn't go up very far. And one of the greatest tragedies we have in our industry sometimes is we keep our lights under a bushel. So I ask tonight that you carry the light out. Thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge our two co-chairs of the Diversity Committee, Susan Nussbaum Goldberg and Candace Bond McKeever, or is it McKeever Bond? Bond McKeever. Okay, too many names. But thank you both for organizing this, and thank you so much to the Writers Guild and your group here this evening. So carry on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm Kim Myers. I'm the Director of Diversity at the Writers Guild, and this event really has been put together by our wonderful Committee of American Indian Writers, which is a relatively new committee at the Writers Guild. We've been active for, year and a half or something along those lines. It's an absolutely marvelous group of professional writers who also are American Indian by heritage, and they'll talk about this tonight. And we also have some other wonderful Writers Guild members, a wonderful actor. So everyone, Angela Riley, you'll hear more about all the panelists, and there will be plenty of time to ask questions at the end, and we hope that you will ask many questions. Part of the reason we're here tonight is that this committee, and I'm sure others on the panel as well, would very much like to serve as a resource for you and for others in the industry who are interested in writing and creating stories about American Indian people. And any questions that you may have now or in the future, this committee is very much here for you to answer those questions. I'm just going to tell you the mission of the Writers Guild of America West American Indian Writers Committee. The committee represents the professional and creative interests of American Indian writers. It works to mentor, encourage, empower, and increase the visibility and employment of writers of American heritage, and serves as a cultural and educational resource for all guild writers seeking to portray American Indians in their work. And that's basically what we're here tonight, is to talk to you, these people talk to you from their own experiences, questions, and hopefully take very, very important information. So thank you to the panel, and I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thank you very much, Kim, for all your hard work. Where's Terry? Terry, you here? Terry also helps out enormously on this stuff. We can't forget Terry Lopez, everyone. In just a minute, I'll introduce the panelists, but of course you have a sheet of paper which has two sides on it, so feel free to, don't forget the resources on the other side, but it also lists in more detail than I will introduce our panel. Now, one thing about Native Americans, American Indians, we'll get into that in a bit, is we are extremely diverse. I happen to be from just one extreme geographic corner of the continent, which is Alaska, and I'm going to share a little bit of that with you just to set the tone for this evening. I was home last month for a convention. It's called the Alaska Federation of Natives. It's a big, very important political meeting. Both U.S. senators and Congressman Don Young come home for that. It would be suicide not to. So it's a pretty big deal that way, and it's a big change from 30, 40 years ago when there was a real Jim Crow situation in Alaska. But I wanted to show you the front page of the Anchorage Daily News. I don't know if you can all sort of see this. It has a boring headline down here about meeting of minds, AFN convention to touch on tribal issues, energy, subsistence, whatever. But the picture is an Inupiat dance group from Barrow doing their Elvis dance. And this combination of political savvy, total engagement with the issues of the day at the very highest levels, combined with joy and love and creativity, that's pretty common, I think, across the indigenous world in the United States. And I think it's the sort of hidden secret of our people's survival into the modern world. And yes, there's been a very unfortunate history that we've had to survive, but I want to assure you all, we're not here to complain about any of that. We're not here to ask, why aren't there more jobs for our writers on TV? Why are there stereotypes? All we want to do is open a door and say, look at this wonderful, unexpected modern world with all this cool stuff that our people are doing now. And maybe that will perk up some curiosity, some interest. As one of the fancy terms I learned in my fancy education, circulate some social energy. We can cook up some energy, get it spinning out of this room. Yeah, maybe some of our writers might get in a writer's room. We're all for that. But really, for most of the things that modern Native people are doing, there's no reason that any talented writer couldn't write a Native character. So we want to help, encourage you, invite you to do that. So why don't I introduce our excellent panel that we have. Just to my right, we have a fellow member of the American Indian Writers Committee, in fact, one of the founding members, Jason Gavin, who's Blackfeet. He's written on two of my favorite shows. He was on Friday Night Lights and now on Royal Pains. And he's really he'll tell us about, he actually sort of cooked up the idea for this committee before he was even a member, which is very impressive. To his right is Professor Angela Riley, who has a curriculum vitae that would stop a bullet at 3 inches, I think. Very, very impressive academic credentials. She is from the Potawatomi Nation, and she'll be able to give us some of the sort of legal and sociological lay of the land of just how our community is today and how it got here, what it transcended to get here. To her right is one of the top showrunners in the business, Nancy Miller. It's a great pleasure to have Nancy with us. She actually cooked up a show that, unlike most of the other police procedurals, which are all in glamorous places like New York and Miami and Vegas and whatever, she put one in one of the flyover states. Why didn't anybody think of that before? And hey, it's Oklahoma, why not have an Indian character, which is played by Gregory Cruz to her right. So we've got a good range of just different sides of creating content that connects with our people. And I think we're going to have a pretty good conversation. I'm going to start some questions going up here, and we're going to converse for a while, but then I will open it up, and I hope that you'll all have, feel free to ask questions, and hopefully we can have a good discussion here. Jason, I think I will start with you. Tell us how you came up with the idea for this committee. How did it come about?
I can't claim credit for it, but just personally, for years, I moved out to Hollywood, like 8 years ago or so, with a baby about to be born, newly married, which is a great time to quit your good job and come deliver coffee to writers. And like most of us in here, came out on a very thin budget, and I had called up the Writers Guild as I'm doing my scripts and trying to get my hone my craft, and called up the Writers Guild, and because you see these things like there's the Asian Writers Committee, and there's the African American Writers Committee, Hispanic Writers Committee. And I know we have less numbers, but I called and asked if they had anything, and unfortunately at that point they didn't. I wasn't in the Writers Guild because, like a lot of things in Hollywood, it's you kind of by the time you get into something, you don't necessarily it's that catch-22 of joining something. You get an agent when you got a job, or you get into the Writers Guild after you gotten your writing job and things like that. So there wasn't much I could do about it, but I kept my eye out, and I guess the origin after that later, the Writers Guild was reporting on a lot of the great things they've done with the other minority communities. And there were some Indian groups, and I know like Mark Reed and Sonny Skyhawk had issued a challenge to Kim Myers, who handles diversity there, basically saying, that's great that we've done this, can we do something else with the with American Indian community? And to Kim's credit, she really took the ball and ran with it. There are American Indians in the Writers Guild. Micah Wright stepped up as the chair, and he deserves to be recognized because he's amazing work leading us. It's a thankless job. It's fantastic. And so, like a lot of things, it started slow. You get 1 or 2 people, word gets out. I know one of the meetings they're expecting folks go, where is everybody? It turned out everybody was down at IAIA in New Mexico. And so then when people got back for that, we started getting some numbers. And the great thing is, in the last year or so, we've really gotten things cooking where we can get a regular attendance and enough critical mass that we can pull off something like this, which again we hope is just a great event, but more than that, just a start to greater things to come. So hats off to all the folks involved. I appreciate the credit, but it wasn't me, it was those guys, and I'm just trying to help move the ball. So
hey Angela, maybe you can address a question that actually came up several times in the reception. What's the deal? American Indian, Native American, what is it?
Am I on here? Can you hear me? All right. Allow me just to start by saying Bozo, Jayak, Angela Riley, Ndegejnikas. My name is Angela Riley. Hello. I want to thank the Lakota men for doing the blessing, and also just acknowledge the indigenous peoples whose ancestral land we are on today before we start. So the deal with the nomenclature, I get this one all the time, and I love it because I'm not what they call identifiably Indian. So sometimes I'll say to someone something about, what do you do? And I say, I do Indian law, and they'll say, I think it's Native American. And I'm sorry, I stand corrected. Thank you for that. So the deal is, the politically correct term of Native American sort of had its heyday starting around in the 1980s. Native American is a perfectly fine term. American Indian, perfectly fine term. Most Native people identify themselves first and foremost by the tribal community they come from. So I say I'm Potawatomi, you say, you're Blackfoot, you're Lakota, but then if that doesn't clarify the issue, then people tend to say, at least in my community, people tend to use the word Indian, and it's commonly used and it's not pejorative. People ask me oftentimes if I'm sure that that's okay, that they can say that, but it is. You can say Indian, but all three terms are perfectly fine. But most people use their tribal identifier.
Right. And if you're in a chat room, you can even be NDN or NDN. Yeah. Right. So.
Right. Angela, why don't you go ahead and give us your couple minutes of just the legal background. Angela's gonna lay out sort of the lay of the land, kind of, because it's such a sprawling geography, both natural and human, that I think it'd be good to just have a little basis for talking about how to access this on television.
All things Indian in 2 minutes?
Go. All things Indian in 2 minutes. Well, I'll tell you, I promised to keep this to 2.5 minutes and not to get embroiled in legalese, so I'm going to give you a very basic primer. The question that I get most often, I'm a lawyer and I'm an academic and I do law, and so people often ask me, what is the legal situation, and sort of in more kind of colloquial terms, why is the legal situation with Native people so different than the legal situation for the rest of us, right? And so that's a question that I've had to respond to pretty succinctly for people across many education and geographic levels. So let me just give you like a very simple kind of understanding of why it is, for example, if there are lots of people in this room, probably since we're in California, who say, why do Indians get to have casinos? That's the number one I hear in California. I won't go into that at all, but let me just explain to you a little bit about why we are who we are in this system. So if you think about, you probably hear people talk about American Indian tribes in the context of using words like nationhood and words like sovereignty. Those are words that go with governments, right? And so we are governments. And one thing to understand is that in the United States, if we just sort of think of the lay of the land and the way law the way the law works in the American framework, we have the federal government, right, that's governed by the U.S. Constitution, and we have the state governments that were officially brought within the U.S. Constitution. Tribal governments were never brought within the U.S. Constitution, so in some sense, we are extra-constitutional, and we are extra-constitutional because we are pre-constitutional, meaning we were here as nations before contact. So when the colonial powers arrived here and tried to negotiate with the nations of people that they encountered across a whole spectrum of levels of sophistication, organization, etc., they negotiated with them as governments, and that's the treaty relationship. So when you hear about treaties with tribes, that's why. We think of treaties as contracts that govern relationships between nations. They did the same thing in the early period, in the contact period. So that nation-to-nation relationship, once the Constitution was formed, it didn't include us. And we continue to operate as nations within the context of the United States. So we don't have full powers of sovereignty that you would have if you were a nation state on the international plane, but we've maintained many attributes of sovereignty. So that's the general understanding of why Indian nations are nations and aren't just private groups. They're not social clubs. They're not entities of the state or of the federal government. We exist independent of them. So that's the nationhood discussion. And that sort of just gives you an idea of where we're coming from when you start to think about some of the fascinating and wonderful plot twists you could come up with the laws that apply in Indian country.
Right, and one thing that's useful to do is to do sort of a mental map of just the United States. It is really a sprawling empire from New England, where the sort of the United States started, all the way out to Alaska, all the way down to Hawaii, all the way over here to California. We're on Tongva land, I believe. Is that correct? all the way down to the Seminole country in Florida, and with all the other nations in between. There's actually a huge amount of diversity here, and it's just really wonderful how many of the nations have survived, actually, the colonial overlay that has come since, and are actually thriving now. Some of the languages are as different from each other as Chinese is from Swedish. And there's really that much. We've sort of gotten all lumped together awkwardly into some legal terminology. But anyway, let's move on. Because we have a showrunner here, Nancy, I want to ask you, how did you get the idea for your show?
I wanted to explore God, pretty much, but with from an edgy place and with fun.
And what better place to do it than a police procedural? I love it. This is. Yeah, go ahead.
That was it. I wanted to set it in the Bible Belt, and I tried because of the nature of the show and our main character. So I tried. I thought of different places, and I just went, God, I'll just put it in Oklahoma where I'm from. And TNT is probably the only network that would have gone for that.
Right.
Everybody else, it would have never, been in Oklahoma.
Right. So you had experience growing up with Indian people around. They seem perfectly normal.
I didn't grow up. I didn't know any Indians.
Really?
No.
In Oklahoma.
But I went to a Catholic school, but I didn't know anybody. No, I didn't. But I didn't know anyone Jewish until I was in college. I swear to God.
I didn't either. I didn't have a bagel till I went to college.
I didn't have a bagel till I moved here.
This is actually very interesting. Nancy is demonstrating something really important, which is you don't have to be an anthropologist. You don't have to be a big expert to, hey, what's going on in the world? Maybe we'll have a show that's somewhere that's good. It's not any harder than writing any other kind of characters, really. I think that's what we'll get into this in more detail in a bit. But just having somebody who's just curious about something and is also willing to do something unexpected. That's always a good way to introduce something new, have something unexpected and kind of fun. And that's something that happens with Indian people all the time because we weren't expected to survive. So all the stuff that we're doing now is all kind of a surprise. Nancy, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the particular character of Detective Stillwater that you wrote. How did you get the idea for it? How did you weave him into the cast?
Well, I wanted an Indian in the cast, Oklahoma, land of the red man. Isn't that what it means?
Literally.
Yeah. And, growing up in Oklahoma, you'd think that there'd be a lot of history, and I don't remember learning a lot about it. So, but we also had the largest race riot in the history of our country. Wasn't in one history book that I ever read growing up. It was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And a lot of people might not even know that. But it was the largest race riot we've ever had, and it was never mentioned in any of the history books I studied. But anyway, so I wanted an Indian, and I thought about this character, and Bobby was always, I pictured him as the grown-up of the group, kind of the one that's more settled among all these other crazy people, and that's Greg. I mean, his whole presence and stuff is that way to me when I see you all on the set and stuff, even though I know that you have fun too. But that's really how it came about, as I wanted that in our mix.
Yeah. That's really great. And it doesn't sound like it was that hard.
No.
I mean, there it is, folks. Hey, I don't have an Indian detective. Just to mention, I was thinking about it the other day. The big professions you always see all the time on TV shows, the doctors, the lawyers, police detectives, FBI agents, there are professional associations for the Indian people in all of those fields. There's enough of us. So it really, TV is a little bit behind the reality, out there. Gregory, how's it been? You've been doing this for a while. You've been playing these kind of characters for a pretty good stretch. Has it gotten better? Is the opportunities or the roles being written?
I've been doing Saving Grace for 3 years now, so I've been kind of out of touch with that for 3 years because I haven't had to go to the auditions or go to the other shows. Thank God. And it has gotten better. It has gotten better from what I've seen. Of course, Saving Grace was a huge move for me. It was a huge opportunity as an actor, mostly as an actor, as a person, to work and grow and do my craft and be challenged by an incredible ensemble that I had to get to their. I had to find my level with them and work with them and find a way to stay within that ensemble and make it work. And I never really thought about it. Never really thought about it as a native person as I was working. I thought more, I'm a part of this group and we've got to, this is what we're doing, and this was fun as an actor. So, and also being of native blood, I had such a difficult time finding that history, my own personal history with that. I grew up in East Los Angeles. I have Mexican blood. I mean, whenever I would say I was Indian, it was, oh yeah, okay, yeah, so it was very difficult. I had to go on my own personal search and find this. So to see developments start to happen more and more within the film industry, with multimedia and things that are happening now, and to try to facilitate those things are very satisfying for me. I think there are great strides that have been made. There can be more strides made, and this is one of them. I think you guys it's incredible that you're doing this. I'm so thrilled. I'm very happy to be a part of this, and I hope to see this grow.
I'd also add that, another reason we'd encourage people to, really try to tap in just to the wonderful Indian stories and characters in our community that's out there, is because that's what the best writers do. When I look at that I want to emulate and their careers, and you see what they've worked on, really the best writers are able to research and make contacts and find truth that's in there. And one of the, you look at people who've had a career over years, they're not intimidated to do a medical show without knowing anything about medicine. You certainly wouldn't want them operating on you, but they learn it and they tell a compelling story. Then they'll move over to science fiction or any kind of these other just broad genres that are there. And so we really want to encourage people and provided resources to get rolling, that it's just another challenge for writers. And then another question I would, if I can just throw something out there, is why does it matter? Because a lot of times in diversity and things, there are a lot of folks working really hard, but I think we don't always articulate up front, why should you buy into it? Why does it really matter? Because a lot of times I've worked in half hour and 1 hour, and in half hour sometimes it's just the question is it funny? That's really the driving thing, and that's obviously hugely important. In drama, is it compelling? But one of the realizations I made working on a show where we were going to have one of our characters who, non-Indian, and this isn't an Indian issue, who was going to join the services and go fight in Iraq. And it made perfect sense for the show, made perfect sense for the character, it made perfect sense in the world we established, and it was really, we thought, the perfect ending for this. But one of the executive producers, despite all that, said that is all correct. However, that image that we're projecting at this point of, a young heroic man going off to Iraq was not something that, necessarily he or others felt comfortable with, because he realized that has an impact beyond just, is this entertaining and is the value in that. What we have, it has a tremendous impact, and this room is full. I'm so glad to see Indian folks here and non-Indian folks, but this room is full of Indian folks who will tell you that for a long time we grew up looking at stories that weren't ours, and we have truths that we really want to tell folks, and that stuff influences the hundreds of thousands of kids and the choices they make. Can I be a doctor? Can I be a lawyer? Can I escape what my family's grown up with? And so we want, we really want to have a challenge to you guys to make sure to have the courage. Contact us. We'll tell you our stories, and they make wonderful stories because they're human stories. They're basic true universal stories. And we really think that, the tapestry of our storytelling as Americans and globally will be enriched by it. So, that's a challenge we want to throw out there. And we realize it can be a little intimidating, but we're here and, we're resources, and please talk to any of us because, it's a wonderful thing and things are getting much better and we are very appreciative of that. But it's going to take, everyone pulling together, non-Indian storytellers, Indian storytellers to do it. So.
Right. On that theme, I think we should probably point out there's a pretty good number of members of the American Indian Committee, the equivalent of ours in the Writers Guild, in the Screen Actors Guild. Raise your hands. Let's see. I'm actually one of those as well. And I think that committee, in one form or another, has been around the longest of any of our presence in the business. A lot of decision makers in the business just aren't aware that there's actually a pretty talented pool of actors who could play the doctors and the lawyers or whoever, or the extortionists or the car thieves or whoever. So that's just my family. Where do you meet Steve Judd's relatives? But no comedy, because there is nothing funny about Indians, ladies and gentlemen. Good, got that straight.
And I'd also add that, folks sometimes, if they're intimidated by Indians, I would say, and I don't want to generalize because the one thing you can say about Indians is one Indian does not speak for all other Indians. We're a very diverse community. But a lot of our folks would be more comfortable playing the car thief and the, degenerate if we also got to play the doctors and lawyers, because then you're not hanging everything on one role. And I would say probably every Indian folks in here could tell you, yeah, we've got folks in our family who, are in jail or, are that we also have doctors and lawyers and folks like that. And let's tell all those stories.
Can I just make a point?
Please do. Feel free to jump in, any of you.
One thing that I think also a slight misconception I think it's important to have dispelled is that that there's a very large urban Native population also in the United States. Right now, I think in the last decade, the balance has started to slightly shift. Slightly more urban Indians than reservation Indians in the United States. There's in 2010, so we'll see what the numbers look like at that point. This is the relocation. In the 50s and 60s, basically, the U.S. government said the reservation system is not working, and they paid Indian families money to move to urban centers. One of those urban centers was Los Angeles. There are also large urban centers in Oakland, the Twin Cities, Seattle, etc. But according to Mayor Villaraigosa, if he has his numbers right, Los Angeles County has the largest urban Indian population of any urban center in the United States, with, I believe, around 120,000 Native people in the city. So one other thing to think about, I think, is the possibilities for thinking about Native characters in urban settings as opposed to rural or reservation settings, or the contrast between that. Just the way that things have developed, you meet many of the people in this room, like myself. I grew up in Oklahoma, but have then moved to an urban setting, and that's a balance that a lot of people have to deal with in many different ways. Just the cultural divide that happens with any person that grows up with more than one culture, which is sort of the American story, really. And so. So that's something else to just keep in mind, because I think if I was writing something, I might, well, who watches television and where are the people that would watch the thing that I'm going to write about? And if you think the only people who'd be really interested in a Native character would be people who are in states where they're not watching this program, it's actually not true. There are a lot of Native people in urban settings, and they're, and I think many, many people would find that compelling. So the demographics are sometimes surprising to people.
And I don't think you need to be challenged. I was in a room one time, and we were talking about an Indian story, or I was talking about an Indian story, and one of the questions I got from one of the folks in the upper echelons was, okay, well, but why is that Indian there? How did that Indian get there? And it was really weird, because I didn't think that was a question that would be asked about anyone else. Like, any other nationality, they would just be there. And we're asking just for the same standard, because I was like, what? There are Indians literally all over the map, and how that Indian got there, we don't need that stumbling block. And I could tell them the story of, okay, well, I guess an Indian man met an Indian woman, and they went out to dinner, and, both of his parents could have told them that, but yeah, don't let that be a stumbling block. We're everywhere.
I think, yeah, along that line, I think Nancy's touched something with this character also. We didn't we weren't touching on Bobby as the native guy. There was, you know, we were building stories about the native guy. He was part of the crew. He was just a man. He was just a very intelligent guy who did his job well, very solid, very well-grounded, very family-oriented. Doesn't necessarily mean all that. Yes, that can be part of nativeness as well. Doesn't necessarily mean we were singling that out, not at all. I think that's wonderful, you know, and then just the nativeness shows all by itself if it's there. Yeah, we did a few things here and there, which is also wonderful because it was more dressing than it was here's this native guy, you know, and I thought that was wonderful. That was also quite a challenge in some ways for me. I just want to say, Brian was talking about a committee. I wasn't on that committee. I raised my hand because I'm in SAG.
That's all right, quite all right. We're all fellow travelers, is how I think of it. Let's see. Jason, I know you have some stories to tell from the trenches of trying to pitch native characters. Maybe, I mean, Nancy is in the enviable position of having her own show and able to create what you want. For somebody up and coming, what are some pointers you could give on how to work it?
Be tenacious, be diplomatic, be determined, and any writer will tell you that if you have any other career options where your passions lie, do something else. But no, I really think that like a lot of things, any complex challenge, like the challenges we deal with, we have to be part of the solution, but you know, there's 100 moving parts that need to happen. Part of that would be, you know, you have to deal with folks who don't know, and they don't necessarily know that they don't know. And whether it's justifying why there could be an Indian in any given state and having to tell that story and feeling like that's a different standard, or trying to tell folks that, you know, this character could be native just because, you know, and we don't have to, you know, we don't have to have it be all about their heritage. This guy could just be, you know, the detective who comes in and helps. I think it's largely the thing that I've run into is it's largely diffusing the expectations of people. Like you know, we have to represent all Native Americans with this one character, and because you do get into things where it's like our actors need to work, and you know, they need to keep their health insurance and things like that, and so it's mainly just keeping people's minds open, you know, and really letting them know that, you know, we're contemporary folks. In terms of war stories, you know, I have pitched successfully, unsuccessfully things, and I would also say you can't necessarily take it personally if you pitch a story and it gets shot down, because, you know, many times that's just because that's what happens when you do these things. You know, you end up rewriting stories, or things get pulled out for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with, you know, anybody's ethnicity. I have a colleague who is a non-Indian who wrote an Indian story, and which was commendable, and I wrote a pilot, and you know, perhaps that person will speak later. But one of the things he had told me was that he had gotten a lot of notes that when the pilot didn't go, and this is an accomplished writer who writes great stuff, that, you know, a lot of folks didn't know if the world was ready for an Indian lead yet. And, you know, there were, of course, other folks who were super supportive of that idea, which is great, but I think we really just have to keep developing our own talents and keep building within our own communities. And, you know, we know it's time, and, you know, other folks just need to know it's time.
Well said. Let me ask you this, to backtrack a little bit. Can you think of, and I'm just going to put this out to the panel, aside from Detective Stillwater, of course, are there other characters that have been put out there that are good models that can be pointed to of Native people on TV? I have to think back a little bit. I mean, like I'm remembering a Seinfeld episode that Kimberly Norris Guerrero was on.
I just saw her like 2 days ago.
Wow.
Haven't seen her in a long time.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
That was a good, surprising thing. They made a lot of jokes with her there, but just the fact that there was a modern Native woman in the city, the plot didn't come to a screeching halt to have to explain why she was there or anything. They just went with it, and that's good. We need more of that.
Billy Jack. No, and the funny thing, the reason I bring it up is because talking about the meaning of it, I remember being a kid and being at Indian events, and if Billy Jack was on, every kid was down there watching it, and it's really funny because like that was like the hero we had, because we had somebody on TV who was not getting shot by John Wayne, and he was kicking ass and defending things. And the funny thing is, I have not watched that movie as a grown up because I don't want to ruin it. Because if it turns out to be, so I either remember the idealized thing of like a bunch of kids sitting around because our parents would let us stay up and they're up talking, and yeah. He'll stay up there for me.
If the Keanu Reeves remake ever comes to pass, you can watch it again.
Yes. I know what that one would be like. No.
Well, this isn't directly responsive to the question about the roles, and I have to confess that I'm a little out of my ilk in that respect, because I don't really, I'm not as much of a consumer, I'm sorry, of the entertainment world as I should be. I'm an academic, so I do a lot of other things. But one thing I did want to say, just on the point of whether the world is ready, I actually think this is going to be kind of a strange thing to say. In the world of advocating for Indigenous people's rights, one of the big things that we do is try to, in many ways, kind of dispel and break down the fetishism. There's so much fetishism around Native people and sort of romanticism of the American West and the conquering, and that's a big part of the American story. And it's a part of our myth, everyone in this room, of our myth. And so a big part of that is educating people about, the complexities of it and what it was really like, and also trying to make Indians seem not ahistorical and moving them to the contemporary world. At the same time, I think there is, if I were a writer, I think that there is a little sort of kernel in there that I would grasp onto. And it is this: I do think the world is ready for a Native lead character. And a part of that is because we still have a romance with the American Indian. Even if it is stereotypical, even if it is ahistorical, there is an American romance with Indians. And there is sort of an exalting of the Indian that isn't really true to form at all, because Indians are people just like everybody else, and there are good ones and bad ones just like there are of all groups. But at the same time, I think that there is something to that I could imagine American culture really wanting to see. I think the person who could do it well it would be an enormous splash. I really do. I think if a writer could write it well, it would be. It would change the face of entertainment, because it's never been done before.
I think that's an incredible challenge to the writers. I really do, because you're gonna battle the Native American mystique. You really are. It's going to be very difficult to no, take that back. It's going to be quite a challenge to deal with that mystique in a way that people are going to be accepting of it. So it's very interesting that you said that.
Yeah, and coming from this side, education is incredibly important. And a couple of things. The episodes that we've done, we wanted to get it right. And I'm just going to be honest, and I'm just going to say what my experience has been. When we brought up doing an episode for Bobby and with a Native American angle on it, there was fear from our studio and our network because of the hassle that we would get. A hassle. We got hassled. We asked questions because we wanted to do it right, and we were not told answers because it was sacred, it was secret, and because some of the things we wanted were blessings and stuff like that. So from the side of the non-Indian, you have, okay, we want to do this, and there's an immediate reaction of, we're going to get in trouble. That's right. What it is. We're going to get in trouble.
This is a big
if you want to do a story about Scientology, it's like, So that was our immediate.
What about Indian Scientology?
I know.
Piss everybody.
Then it'd be really bad. But that was the immediate reaction. So we pushed through that, and then when we started trying to do our research, we didn't get answers, and I got pissed off one day, and I said, "You tell them this is why we get the shit wrong." Is because they won't tell us the truth. So we're going to put on something stupid that's going to really make them mad. And so that's one of the things that we run into. And what do we do about that?
Yeah, I'd say, and it's challenging too, because again, we're not monolithic folks, and saying like, oh, what's the Indian way of doing this? What's the Indian attitude on this?
We were doing Cherokee, Choctaw, we were doing, and we got into it on this last thing, and then he came up with a great solution. But you knew that we went through all that, right?
Yeah,
this last one?
I did. It's not something that I haven't seen before. I've actually had to deal with from the other end. We want you to do this. I can't do that. Yeah. Why can't you do it? Well, because we need to ask these guys before, because you're having me represent these guys, and I don't know their customs. So if there's a problem there, and I put this out for you, they're going to come looking for me, not you. And there's another problem with that. They're going to write right to the native guy. Why didn't you get it right? Well, I don't represent you. I'm an actor. It's what I do. Honestly, what am I, the expert anthropologist, Indian guy? No, I'm not. I'm just an actor, man. I'll try to get it right. So I understand from this end as well. It was very difficult, the situation we had. It ended up getting resolved because I am also Mexican, so we just went with Mexican stuff. Right.
But so we couldn't do Native American
stuff.
But
we couldn't do Native American stuff, and it had to do with some sacred rituals, some sacred stuff dealing with a specific tribe. And rather than being saying, well, guys, let's work together on this. Maybe we don't want you to show that, but let's work on this. Maybe you can do. There was none of that. It was no, you can't do that. Hey, who do you think you are? And it was like, wow, man, how do you expect them to do this? And then they're gonna, and then I'm the native guy, so I gotta, and now I gotta go talk to my friends because, okay, so it's coming to a screeching halt, and why would they want to do this at all now? Why would the producers want to deal with this? They don't have to. Right, and that's like, whoa, wait a minute, guys, you don't understand. So maybe that brings up a question for you all, another one. How do we do this? How do you educate the public? I'm trying to deal with it the best I can as an actor, but I can only do so much. And how do you as writers, how do you convey this to your nations, or how do you convey this to the people that have that power to say yea or nay?
I think one of the big problems was TNT had done Into the West and had gone through this in a big way with that miniseries. So they were worried about it. And to their credit, it was like, hey, go do it,
Right.
But it was interesting. It was really interesting. It was like we get, negative feedback when we get it wrong, but when we try to get it right, we're not allowed to, which I understand. But it leaves us in because I completely respect sacred, secret rituals and stuff. But how do we portray a Native American in this situation if we can't show it? Was interesting. And
I would say a large, I think we in the Indian community know that there's a lot of criticism that sometimes comes, and a lot of us will privately say, we need to be more forgiving in some instances. And a lot of it is just getting more opportunities out there. It's like a batting average thing. If there are, if we get to see 200 Indian characters on TV, you don't have to get it right every time. And then that's, right. But it's the rarity of when, we've appeared on TV that, that raises the stakes for us a lot of times. And it's not fair to the people who are getting it out there because they're being judged with the legacy of all the times that it's been gotten wrong. But again, that's what, when we say make it you can always go a little later. Have that, Indian cop who just comes in and just happens to be Indian, and, you do that a few hundred times and then suddenly, because it doesn't always have to be about necessarily, the sacred stuff, because that's tough with anything. You do that with any religion, and people take their spirituality very seriously. So that's the tough thing. I always try to speak and make analogies that people could understand. Where when you're saying what is the Indian opinion on it, that would be saying a foreigner asking what is the American opinion on the Iraq War, good or bad. It's like we're 50-50 apparently. And then sometimes turn it around and say what is it like? Perhaps being an Indian growing up in the last, 70 years with the media and how we've been portrayed, I'd say maybe think about how it's like when you're an American and you're watching the coverage of us on, say, Al Jazeera on a particularly unfair day, or where it seems like they haven't done their research, and you're watching it going, crap, is that the way they see us as Americans? You know, and sometimes the stuff is rooted in some truth, but it's like, you know, how do you portray America on Al Jazeera? Hopefully, broadly, all the good and the bad, you know? So it's a tough challenge.
But also, bear in mind, this isn't a challenge every day. It's not always about Native American rituals and how are we going to do this. But whenever that particular thing comes up, I've been in several shows where that's been a problem. And it's like people become difficult to deal with, and why. I'll speak very briefly. We did a show in Denver at the Denver Center Theater called Blackout Speaks. And we had Native American consultants, the DeCerces, were there with us through the entire thing. And they were wonderfully helpful because we were dealing with a lot of stuff that was very important to people. We wanted to maintain that sacredness of it, and they just switched a few things. They changed them so that you really didn't see the ritual. It kind of was like that, but it really wasn't it at all. And switched them so that it did not infringe on people's beliefs, which I thought was a wonderful way to do it.
And if I can just add to that, I think it also presents, and I completely hear what you're saying, and I think it presents a somewhat of an educational opportunity in and of itself. I deal with the protection of some of the intangible aspects of Native culture in terms from the legal side. What can the law do? How does it work? Both tribal law and national. And it's a common one of the common problems, I think, is conveying the element of sacred to people outside of the community. And sometimes sacred just gets thrown out as a word that I think starts to lose its force because people sort of feel like, well, everything can't really be sacred, and what does it really mean for that to be sacred? And so the term itself can be slightly problematic. But there are, because of the interconnected nature of the way Native communities work, so traditionally, and by traditional I mean sort of in the pre-modern sense, Native communities tended to, and many still do, religion and spirituality and culture and life is all one thing. It's not sort of the way many people conceive of sort of you go to church one day of the week or to temple one day of the week, but the rest of your life has a secular component. They're much more interwoven, so it becomes difficult to extract out the things that can permissibly be viewed by the public and the things that can't. But I think that tension in and of itself is an educational opportunity, because even the fact that that exists is a difference between Native communities and non-Native communities. It's only one tiny prong, and you could probably only do one show on that, you know, and then you're like, okay, but now you want to move on. But then the other thing that you mentioned I think is really important is that Native communities do, if you put them in a position of power, I've seen this in my own research and my own work, if you empower them, they will tweak things so that the things that the public sees don't have the meaning that they have internally. Right. So that there are things that can be public and can be displayed and serve an educational purpose, but it doesn't disclose the things that by culture or tradition can't be disclosed. And that commonly happens in art, in rug design, in jewelry, in storytelling, and a lot of things that the non-Indian public sees that's represented as Indian. If it's something that has great meaning internally, oftentimes it's been slightly changed. And so I think also just integrating, you know, consulting with Native people can also produce sometimes that effect.
Absolutely.
But yeah, when you only have a few, the stakes are really high and people are very sensitive.
And a lot of times for a lot of Indians, spirituality is a little bit more of a private issue. It's, you know, I always say, when's the last time you saw two Indians showing up at your door saying, hey, come join our religion? You know, it's like, I wrote a sketch about that just because it is something you don't see. We're not out there. It's, you know, it's a full-time thing. But, you know, also I think every Indian does deal with that duality of wanting to honor the past and still be here present in the future. And it is a weird thing. In America, we also get saddled with that responsibility of you guys are kind of the keepers of the ancient, you know, tribal, spiritual stuff that I think everybody, if they research their heritage, would find. You know, if you went back to Scotland or any place in Europe, you would find many of the same things. It's just this is kind of our backyard. And, you know, when we feel kind of guilty that, you know, crap, I'm driving an SUV and I got this house and we're messing up the earth, who's going to help fix this thing? And, you know, we are the Indians who get that kind of dropped in our lap. But we're dealing with the same conflicts, you know. We're modern living in this world.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw out a general pitch for something. I'd like folks to think about comedy just plant that idea out there. Indian people are actually very, very funny. And that almost never, it's almost never been able to survive all the filters to get in a movie or TV. You almost never see that. But if you hang around Native people for any, just here earlier, it's just, it's comes up, buckets of it. I mean, and I'm looking at Elvis here, Inuit Elvis. And that's part of the secret of the survival, too. It's that one, there's a fancy French term, Angela, you might have heard this in your equally fancy education. It's called bricolage. It's a French term. It's like,
Sorry, I'm not familiar.
different field.
You were watching TV that one night.
It's like what Fred Astaire would do when he would dance with a coat rack or something. You spin something in your own way. You make it your own thing. And Indian humor is like that. It's not becoming a subject of somebody else's power structure or anything else. No, you're spinning your own story, and you're spinning your own energy, and you're making it your own. And it's just beautiful and fun and full of joy. And I'd really just like to see some of that get tapped on a sitcom or something. I think the sitcom is just starting to come back to life a little bit. It's been on intensive care for a while, but it seems like it's just starting to perk back up. And if folks out there are looking for just a fresh idea, this might be just surprising enough. Maybe it could work.
And a lot of great humor and comedy is born of challenge and really tough circumstances, and I that's not a uniquely Indian thing. I mean, it's like if you read Angela's Ashes, you can tell somebody that can be a very hilarious book at times. What's it about? This guy with a deadbeat drunk dad who's all his brothers and die when he's a little kid, and but despite all that, in that there's that strength of humor that keeps things going, and I think that's a very Indian thing too. I mean, it's like one thing that is very Indian, and I've told non-Indian friends who show up is if you're getting teased, that's probably a good thing.
Right.
That's a way of showing love and that you're accepted.
Exactly. It's actually a way of teaching, in a way, because jokes come from when two different sets of meaning butt up against each other, and there's a misunderstanding, and it actually takes a lot of intelligence to make a joke work. And I think Indian people actually should get a lot more credit for being so smart, for being able to do that as just a part of their daily life, because they don't have access to so much else in society, but they do this really well. And I'm hoping that with this critical mass that we have with there's enough Indians now in the Writers Guild to have a little bit of a committee. There seems to be some critical mass that's also building on some other. Larissa here, who's a member, we've taught young Native playwrights at the Autry. Some of the committee members came over and taught. I think there's some good pooling of energies happening where it's much more than the sum of the parts.
You've also got to get, though, besides Native American writers, you've got to get all the other writers to think about this. It's not about, because and casting directors. I don't know if there's a reach out to casting directors, but unless you put in a script, because unfortunately, and if you read scripts, and I don't do this anymore, I used to write like this, but I'd go, Nancy Miller walks in a room. Well then, and then Tommy Wilson walks in a room black, but white sets the standard. And most scripts, you don't, now I identify it, he's white, she's black, she's Hispanic, whatever it is, because that shouldn't be like that. There should be no standard.
Right.
But that's the way people think. That's the reality. And in order to break through that and to get the awareness and the education, it's got to come from more than just Native American writers, And the day that the casting director brings in the good actor for the part that hasn't been identified as Native American, I think that's when you go, okay, we're making great progress. As a woman, one of my big things is I'm so sick of women being the victims, being the appendage, while the guy goes out and solves the world's problems. So I make those changes myself. I did a show called Any Day Now, where I learned so much about race. And I learned a lot about this, and so I carry this forward, but it's only, I'm lucky that I've been able to do that, And the people that aren't able to do that have got to be reached and have got to be told, guys, it's not a big deal. It's just not that big a deal. Make your characters diverse. And I don't know how you reach them, but them and casting directors need to bring in people that are not just identified on the page as a certain ethnicity.
Very, very well said. And to recap, part of the pitch at the beginning of this conversation, really, there's nothing except for some very specific cultural things that could not be written by any talented writer. And we want to invite non-native writers to come on in. It's not that bad. It's really great what we got in here. It's full of surprises, and if you don't watch out, you might learn something. Is Renee Haynes still here?
No, she had to leave.
Oh, shoot, she had to leave. We did have a casting director in the room earlier who could actually speak to that. I had the pleasure once of working with April Webster, who is one of the early and most brilliant proponents of non-traditional casting. We did an HBO movie, 2 parts, called Grand Avenue. Did any of you see that back in the 90s? But we need more of that. You're absolutely right. And if it's not written in there, they won't bring it in.
And it's not that I think that people go, I am not going to put an Indian in my script. But you don't think, oh, I'm going to put a native. You don't think about it until that awareness comes to you. I did a panel, I don't know when it was, about diversity. And we were talking about disabled actors and how we need more parts for disabled actors. And then someone said, but it doesn't have to, you don't have to write a disabled person walks, or, is in a wheelchair or whatever. Because you can have a part, but cast them as disabled. And I was like, duh, I hadn't thought about that. So once someone put it in my head, I did it. And so much of it is just that. I don't think people are consciously going, I'm not going to tell these stories. And look, if it makes money, Hollywood's going to do it. So, I don't know.
I'd also say that the reality is, number one, I would start with, I don't think, most people who, are in this industry are doing anything with any ill will. It's just kind of habits, and I think every day we have those realizations of, oh, that's a new perspective, and I hadn't thought of that. When I had a daughter, that massively changed my perception of gender things, and I thought, wow, aren't I this progressive person? But that definitely changed me. And I would also say that the reality of it is, I think Indian writers, diverse writers in general, we need every writer's help. But I think it falls on us to work a little harder and really network with our actors, get to know them, because we need to be able to bring the people to the roles, to the casting directors. Because there are casting directors who are out there who are really trying and helping, but I've also been on shows where I watch the auditions, and it's very evident that those casting directors don't necessarily have the access to the diverse folks, even though there are great actors out there. And it was one of those things where they said, you know what, I have to call in somebody with a tan and have them read, and you look at the audition and that actor never stood a chance, and questions, and it's very evident that those casting directors don't necessarily have the access to the diverse folks, even though there are great actors out there. And it was one of those things where they said, you know what, I have to call in somebody with a tan and have them read, and you look at the audition and that actor never stood a chance, and 12 other diverse actors who would have, really come in and had a fighting chance for the role. So it does fall on us to really, do our homework and network. It's a big little Indian world is what we say, and it's really funny. You meet someone and you usually know like their cousin or you worked with so and so, and we need to use that to our advantage.
There's a couple of things there. I hope I can get my thoughts clear on this. That just kind of shot into my mind. One of them is, it sounds to me like we're talking about raising consciousness, which just is what we've been trying to do for the longest amount of time. And the hard part with raising consciousness, I'm going to try to go in the stream of thought because I'm kind of tired. The hardest part about raising consciousness in this industry is that I know personally that I've hit a glass ceiling for a long time, dealing with what studio believes will make money. Bottom line is money. If it's going to make money, they're going to go for it. If it's not going to make money, getting that kind of consciousness to get raised to understand that this might make you even more money is very difficult, because again, bottom line is it is about money. A large part of it is about money. Yes, there is talent, and yes, you do want to get out the best that you can, but that seems most of the time, in my experience, to take the back seat. How do you do that? How do you raise that consciousness? And how do you get them to see? I was just down in Coachella earlier today. They're having an international Latino film festival down there, December 4th and 5th. And nice plug. They were asking a lot of very interesting questions, and I was thinking, what is it that how do you tell someone or show someone something to get them to expand their horizons a little bit? What do you say to them? And it's not quite empowerment that I'm talking about, because I like what you said. How do you empower them? And I was thinking right now, mixing that with what I thought earlier, how do you empower them to come over here and look at this community and go, there might be something here that's going to enhance what I've been doing all along. Am I willing to take that risk? Am I willing to go there because my formula works and I don't need to move it? So the challenge again is to myself, is to you as writers, you as an audience, and you as not just as native writers, but as people who are trying to get their product out there, get their thoughts, get their I'm tired. Yes, their vision. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. How do you do that? And again, here's another challenge, and the challenges are just going to keep coming and coming and coming. But I think, bottom line, in essence, these are the things you have to deal with in order to make that happen.
I think we might open the floor to questions. I don't know. Wow, good number of hands. Let's start with you, Larissa.
Do we need to get it on the mic, or is it everything?
I could hand up.
Okay.
Do you want some music? Donahue or something? To the cars. This is a talking stick, folks.
Hi, thank you, Brianne. Hey, Larissa Pastors. I have a quick comment and then a little question. First off, in what you were discussing before with the episodes and the difficulty you had, I think we just want to reiterate that that's what the American Indian Committee at SAG and the American Indian Writers Committee is hoping to kind of help with that difficulty, because I grew up on a reservation in South Dakota. I'm Lakota. I'm a writer, but I've also worked in this industry, and all of us are professionals, have worked in the industry, so I think we can help guide other writers and producers and executives to people that maybe have a better understanding of the industry and how you can do those shadings, how you can shade things, and to guide you to resources that understand how to work through that. And I think that's
the guild.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Call the guild. So I think that's what I just want to remind everyone that's what we're here for, is to, we don't represent obviously every nation, but we can help guide you to people that are a little more understanding, and not that they're going to cheat, but that they understand the difference between, I think, commercialism and sacredness, and how to do both. I mean, I have to do it whenever I write something. I just wrote something that had a Dakota ceremony in it, and I'm Lakota, and I said to go to a Dakota person and talk to them to be specific. And then I said, I don't choose to represent sacred things in my work, but I represented a representation of it, my own interpretation that was based on a truth of my character and how my character would interpret this as a contemporary person. And so, anyway, I just want to throw that out to everybody to reiterate that's why we're here. And then a small question that this really means nothing to anyone but me. Nancy, as a native writer, it was interesting when you said that when you wanted to put something more spiritual in your show, everyone's like, As a native person, I always get, it's not Indian enough, it's not spiritual enough, they didn't do anything magic, they didn't see any dead people, they didn't, I get that all the time, and I write contemporary stories of contemporary people. And so it's interesting, do you ever experience that as a white person writing native people, or did they just do it to us?
I experienced it, yeah. I mean, when I wanted to do my last series, if I'm understanding the question, it took me 10 years because it was about race, and it was scared. We can't do that. And this was easier. This was a quicker development process. Am I answering it right? Okay. So yeah, I get it too. Absolutely. And, listen, I mean, most of the buyers are white. The ultimate buyer is a male in every single studio in this town that I know of, at least in television. We sell to the females, and then they have to go to the males to get it approved. So that's the way it works. And their prejudice and conceptions that they have that sometimes you can get around and sometimes you can't, But I've found the best tool is just passion. Like, are you kidding me? How can you not do this? Because they don't know either. And it just becomes a mutual,
And we're in a business that is risk averse. They don't want to admit it, but they really are. They're like, we can't do that. Oh, someone changed the rules and they'd lost. Suddenly everyone's making that when they turn it all down the next year, and then some of those fall, and then it's on to a new thing. But, like we were saying, we know it's time.
I thought Into the Westwood, I was enthralled with that. I loved maybe it was horrible from a native point of view, but I thought, oh, this is going to open up, and I was so jealous that I didn't get to write one of those. I just thought, wow, what a great, and I thought that would open up a lot of things, and it didn't. I was surprised.
And I think it even thought about smoke signals, and just like,
yeah,
it's tough.
We've got a lot of flashes in the pan. All kinds of hands up. Wait, if you can speak loud, just go ahead and stand up.
Yeah, I've been asked by some Brits actually to develop a children's project for new media, and I want to share that I told them that I wanted the leader of the group to be Native American, and the Europeans are fascinated with American Indians, and when I told them how I wanted to develop the character, they were very receptive, and we're doing a pilot on it. But my question, and I hope somebody can give me an answer on this, is I don't know what's going on with the casino money, and why the casino money and the Native American, it's kind of like the lottery, you don't know what's going on with them, but I don't see it, and I maybe some of you can enlighten me, but I don't understand why there isn't this money being diversified into two very strong components, if there is money being generated there, and that would be that the Native Americans are developing their own entertainment structure, and that they're not backing political candidates, and that money is not being put into the political process and the entertainment process. And can someone enlighten me what's going on there? Because I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I guess I have sort of three big soapbox issues that, if I'm in a writer's room or anywhere else that I will proudly get on. One of them is, we're not all rich from casinos. And I actually think that the casino money is going into politics. If you look in California politics, I believe American Indian tribes are the #1 donors. We had big scandals in D.C. with, what's his name? Yeah. So, only about half the tribes of the 566, 64, who's gotten approved lately, have gaming, and only a handful of those are making the big money that, everyone thinks everyone's making. And of that, just by federal law, I believe it's 60 or 70% has to go to civic projects and things like that. So it's not, it's going to worthwhile stuff, building schools, building roads, creating jobs and stuff like that. It's also going into entertainment things. I think Indians are finding out, just like a lot of people who have invested in entertainment, it's a sketchy business, and it's very easy to lose money than it is to make money in education. But first and foremost, one of the things we always talk about gaming is I'm glad that our tribes that have it. They're doing a lot of good with it. It's not going to replace our other long-term solutions that we're working on. But also, when we talk about our schools or, any opportunities that are out there, we also don't want the federal government that we've made these treaties with to kind of let them off the hook and say, well, you no longer have to honor your obligations, and because they honor all their other obligations, whether it's Social Security or Medicare or anything like that. And then the other thing is, it's because all of the tribes are distinct entities, the tribes do share, but there's a certain point where, and I make the case with California, we're in a $30 billion budget hole. We don't go to Nevada, hey, fellow Americans that are also, if we're going to say California is, white, I know it's not, but, hey, white Nevada, hey, white California, why don't, you've got all that gaining money, why don't you, pour some over here to fix our thing? We kind of have the same standards that other governments do, because if the governor of Nevada just handed over $3 billion to California, he'd probably be out of a job the next day, And Indians are sharing with that money, and they're doing really important, good stuff with it, But it's not as much money as everyone thinks, and it's going to a lot of good things already. So,
and if I could just jump in, this is just a quick little note. There are also some other opportunities that you should think about and be aware of. And it's too sort of legally complex to go into here, but because of the specific governmental and sovereign situation of tribes, there are certain tax advantages potentially to doing business in Indian country. Some of those tax advantages are being now exported to the entertainment industry, I think in a fairly new way. One of the Indian Writers Guild Indian Committee members and I were just talking, Steve Judd, who's also from Oklahoma, we were just talking about a friend of ours who's out there, who's Chickasaw, who's trying to create some of the same tax advantages in Indian country, in Chickasaw territory, to do filming of movies that you would get in Canada. So trying to make Indian country more competitive for filming as well. And then the more money that's generated through that he's also, and I'm sure a lot of you in this room are involved with these projects, producing, writing, directing, and developing your own product. A lot of times, right now, relatively small, going into the independent realm and film festival realm, but with a huge opportunity there. So that's something else to just keep in mind if you're thinking about doing projects and filming. There are Native people trying to really facilitate bringing more entertainment money to Indian country, and there are some tax advantages to doing that.
And I have to say also that along those lines, yeah, why not? Go and ask. It doesn't hurt. I mean, they can only tell you we've got our money tied up over here. But we tried doing that too. We wanted to film in Oklahoma, and we talked a little bit. And I said, well, let me see if I know anybody. And I kind of talked to whoever I could over here, and I talked to some of the people when we were in Oklahoma City, some of the Native people down there, and in Oklahoma, unfortunately, it wasn't, no, get out of here. It was, boy, our money's kind of tied up because we've got this whole thing. We're building this Native American historical, not a museum, but this whole facility they're doing with education and stuff. So their money's tied up in that. And then there was a conference down in Southern California that a friend of mine went down to kind of feel out, but she couldn't generate anything. But, it's yes, they are exploring this. I mean, here's one of the producers of a hit show that we were trying to get involved with the Native community to say, hey, look, if you can help us with this, if we can produce this in Oklahoma, we can find a way to make this work for you. It's not just a one-way thing. We're not just saying give us some money. We're saying, hey, come on, let's get involved. Let's find a way we can make this work for you. Maybe there's a story.
Tell us what stories you want told.
Yeah. So really, really, really a lot of good food for thought there.
And I would say too, one thing about the tribes. In my previous life, before I came out to get coffee for wealthy producers in Hollywood, I was a lobbyist for American Indian colleges, and there in the halls of Congress, I saw the impact of people not having the full facts about Indians. Indians, a lot of organizations are funded through the Department of Interior and Bureau of Indian Affairs, and at a really crucial hearing, they ended up, sometimes they'll close the doors when they have to make the really tough decisions and boot everyone out, and we're there to try to represent our communities. And the last thing that, we heard before we got removed was a congressman turning to a couple others and going, what is all this? All these tribes are rich from gaming right now. We need to do this. We can cut this. And then before we could say, well, that ain't true, the doors were shut, decisions were made, and it does have an impact. I mean, when I was working for Indian colleges and Indian schools in general, they're funded at about half the rate that mainstream institutions are funded at. And the reason is because the people who are making those decisions are in the BIA, which is in the Department of Interior, not education like everyone else. And, they know about offshore drilling and gas rights and stuff. They don't know about, education and costs like that. And I believe the BIA, before it was in the Department of Interior, it was in the Department of War, back when we had a Department of War. So
here's another opportunity for consciousness raising, which is so difficult. Again, it's another, but it's got to be done somehow. So again,
but understand, if tribes and tribal leaders are reluctant to sign over big checks, it's because, they're concerned, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Things that no one knows how long gaming will last.
Sure.
Right. I'm going to work the room a little bit here. Let's find a question in the back. Ma'am?
Hi. Thank you. I'm covering this for Emmy for the Television Academy, and I had one comment and one question. The comment is, I actually was privileged to do an article interviewing the directors of Into the West, and I can't remember now how many, but at least one of them started their mornings with a blessing and by a native Indian, I think shaman, I can't remember, but some holy person, and felt that brought a lot to the filming. And I think there were some weather problems that were averted, and they attributed that to that as well. And then my question is that now quite some time ago, I had read a lot of the written, published version of Indian literature, folklore. I realized it's an oral tradition, but this was the published version. And the imagery was so compelling, the language, everything was so rich. I was wondering where that fits into the, making contemporary not historic, when that background is so beautiful and rich and compelling, in terms of writers incorporating it or being inspired by it, or whatever.
Everybody's looking at you.
Where does it fit in?
Yeah, if that's something that you're interested in including, you don't want to include Granny Body because it's not contemporary, it is historic.
I would think that, I guess it depends on the story you're telling and the characters that you've created. I guess it depends on all that, but I would only think that it would enrich it, your project. So.
If I could just say one thing, I'm obviously not a writer of this ilk, but one thing that I think is important, that I think your question gets at, is that I do think it's important that we continue to emphasize the connection between the past and contemporary Native people. So even though Native people, obviously, we're contemporary, we're just like everybody else in this room in many respects, but people who've grown up in tribal communities, you had beat into your head from the time you were little about your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. The whole culture is about the whole culture, at least, and I don't mean to essentialize, but there is a common theme in many native cultures of respecting the people who came before you and acknowledging them, and also trying to do good for the people who are coming after you, and seeing that all as a cycle rather than as a linear spectrum. And that is common to most Native communities, and I think that is something it's very difficult, it's a fine line to walk to explain to people that we're contemporary people, and at the same time make people understand that, at least for people who've grown up in tribal communities, we do have common understandings across Native cultures that do rely very heavily on respecting our ancestors and our future generations, as well as our relationship with our Aboriginal territories. So some of that, I think, is integrated in contemporary life for Native people, and it's still contemporary. It's part of who they and we are today. So it's not so clear. It's not as if a line has been drawn. If that makes sense.
And most Indian elders will really just hammer home, learn the language, keep it alive. It's incredibly important, and that's a challenge that a lot of us deal with. And it's also challenging for Indians, because you'll see, I think non-Indians perceive Indians as all kind of one folk, but you'll see a Lakota actor struggling really hard to learn Navajo for a role, and it's funny because, my wife is Navajo, and she'll kind of laugh at people trying to talk, because it's a tough language, the Japanese couldn't crack it in World War II, and it's not much easier for a modern Indian, but language does enrich, and I guess with bringing two, you have to know French. I was not briefed on that, but I will learn.
Put your hands up. I'm going to go over here just a little bit.
Me? Okay. Hi, I'm Tiffany DeLorme. I'm a producer, native producer, and I've been very fortunate to have worked on some great shows in the studio system. Not because I'm native, though, but, otherwise. And as a writer, I've been out pitching projects, and some of them are native, and I'm told that we don't have the same marketability as the Latin or African American community, and the advertisers will not buy into contemporary native shows. And Nancy, I want to know, do you feel that that is the truth?
I would say, are they talking about marketability, foreign sales?
Yeah, yeah, and also that advertisers, like if it's a show like 90210, and they have really strong advertising, which is very important, that if it's a show about contemporary natives, the advertisers are afraid and they don't think that it's profitable, so they won't buy into the show, so they don't get made. I just wanted to know, how did you feel about that?
I don't ever think about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've never also had a hit that sells internationally. But I as a writer, as a producer, I'm supposed to, but I just pitch the stories I want to tell.
Yeah.
And there's so many universal themes in everything we do that should be the selling point, not
the market.
And if you get that, have some evidence.
Yeah.
Go, well, that's really not true. Look at this. This sold blah 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 or whatever. If you're getting that a lot,
yeah, it's a good point.
But it kind of just sounds like a
baloney.
Yeah.
I'd say if, Latin and African American and Indian and Asian kids can look at good-looking white kids on TV and watch that program, then, white kids and everyone else can look at Indian kids and stuff. It's, as everyone who's worked in Hollywood knows, it's very easy to get a no answer. There's a million reasons to get a no answer, and, the yes is tough.
Thank you. Merci. I'm also French.
Okay, well, I've sort of been sitting here livid ever since Jason said at the beginning that the network didn't want to do native military characters because, I don't know whether Travis is still here, but like his dad was a fighter pilot in Vietnam, and like I was in Kosovo and Afghanistan. My dad was in the academy, and one of his classmates is on a casino committee. And my grandfather, he was in the First World War in the trenches and everything. So I just think for the networks to say, native characters aren't in the military. I mean, if you've ever been to a powwow, who's the first people to come out? The veterans come out in their hats, carrying the flags.
Yeah, so basically we serve at a much higher rate than we're in the population, and we die at a much higher rate of the population.
I know, and just for the networks to say, an Indian can't be a warrior, I mean, come on. So that's sort of my comment here that, there's a lot of them out there, and
I think it's just roles in general, irrespective of military or whatever, it's,
Right, and that's one of the things, again, though, it's just not useful to go and say, why isn't there more of this, or why is it, we have to pitch it as a positive thing. Look at this cool thing, wouldn't that be a great character to tell? We got to go for that positive.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Erica. Anyway, why hasn't there been more migration of wonderful fiction pieces dealing with American Indian stories and characters migrating over to the small screen, even the big screen? For example, Grand Avenue, I read that years ago and I loved it, and when HBO finally did it, I was ecstatic. But there's such rich stories, rich characters, such fresh material available, and in these days of pre-branded, content, why isn't more of that going on? And I also wanted to dispute the other. I did a study with an organization a number of years ago. The international marketplace eats up anything American Indian, whether it's historical, whether it's contemporary, huge numbers. But it doesn't exist for television because it hasn't happened in television. So, but if you could address the one issue about fiction.
Well, and I'll address this a little bit. I don't want to take up too much time. There's this chicken or the egg problem, like Jason was talking about, just trying to join a guild or something. There's never been a project that's made a lot of money, so they don't want to do it. Even Smoke Signals was not marketed very hard. It made some money. It didn't make a lot. It's an important touchstone, and everybody knows it. It's become a common reference point. It didn't make a lot of money. It wasn't a blockbuster. as to why more, and this relates to the earlier question about, the Native stories that have been written, why isn't more of that just getting in? One of the areas of sort of modern communication media that Native people were able to really get some headway in was the printed word in short stories and novels and poetry. But a lot of those people aren't that interested in really being in television. So no one has just really been able to carry that through. I mean, it's a little bit like going to the war in here. I mean, we're barging at battlements and trying to find.
There's a huge, I feel like this is the elephant in the room that nobody's talked about, but I've heard it. I don't know if y'all have heard it. But whenever you bring up Native American, the first thing you hear is there are no actors. There's a tiny pool of Native American actors.
Yes.
And to overcome that thought is almost impossible.
It is.
You fight that tooth and nail, and that's across the board. Every time I've ever had Native American anything, we're never going to get an actor. There's not enough actors. That's one of the main things that I've seen why they don't do Native American projects or have those actors.
That's just frustrating as hell, man. Because I'm like, over here!
No, I know. A number of us, their hands are going for questions. Could the SAG members of the American Indian SAG members in the room just stand up? There's Lonnie. I'm in it. Robert's currently doing a new play at downtown. We fight with this a lot too, and I'm hoping that maybe now with a sort of synergy now with the writers committee that maybe we can get a little bit of attention to dispel that myth, because that is destructive, and a lot of us beat our heads against that all the time. Okay, more questions.
I probably won't really need that.
We'll go. I actually have a comment for Nancy Miller. Totally amazing what you are doing. I think in order for us to hear the world, we have to know the world. And I'm an African American, and if it wasn't for so many who went and broke barriers, a lot of us would not be on TV. And awareness is what we all need. Love is universal. As writers, I think as we embark and keep learning about one another, we can go out there and bring out that material. There is power in numbers and awareness and knowledge. And with the American Indian and what you've done and how you go out there and you fight for something that is so important, because in order for change to even take place, we have to have that conviction and that belief that it can be and it can do it. And as I'm sitting here, my spirit is totally touched. I'm so happy and honored to be invited by Erica because it's so meaningful. I'm an advocate every day about change and love and just understanding one another. And it's so important for each and every one of us that are in this room to learn and continue to learn about bridging the gap of culture, and that is by learning other cultures. So.
Questions?
All right, just to add to that, when you talk about sharing your light, and John Shafter said at the beginning, I think also, Nancy, I think that's so critical when you talk about these rooms at the networks and who's making these decisions. If there's no one in that room that has a diverse point of view and that can say, well, let's have that person who's handicapped. Why don't we have that person? If you don't have that person who has that viewpoint, then everybody in that room is going to think alike. They're all going to have that same point of view, and everything's going to continue to look the same. And so, we have to really, really try to get our people to have that diverse point of view in those rooms and continue to try to have them continue to hire, people with diverse points of view and have diversity. That's why diversity is important. That's why it is important to have those diverse points of view in these studios, in these production rooms. People say it doesn't matter. It does matter. Absolutely. And so thank you so much, all of you, but thank you so much, Nancy Miller, for being open-minded and also for pushing for that in your shows and having diversity on your shows. It is really appreciated. Thank you.
It makes a better show.
Makes a better show. That's exactly right.
And I learned on any day now.
Right.
I've said often if next show is about a white family in Milwaukee, I'll have a diverse writing staff. But it's also behind the camera, and it's the whole ballgame. And you get so crazy and you forget, but it's the awareness and the education. That's the thing.
And people should be encouraged to hire at all levels. I mean, writer's assistants. You're sitting there typing, it's not glorious, but, I was in rooms as I was learning the craft and was able to interrupt them when they were going to do something and show them the right way. And people, as long as you do it respectfully and you're not the executive producer of the show, someone who's getting the coffee can come in and give you a great idea. And the good writers and the good showrunners are open to that from all levels.
Absolutely. But what cracks me up is we live in LA. It's just liberal, all this, and nobody practices the shit that they say that they believe. I don't understand it.
Right. I'm sorry. Is Ron Taylor still here? I saw him here earlier. He's in the diversity department at Fox, and he might have been able to speak to us. I'm gonna run around to the back here, to the back of the room, because I don't want to forget you guys. I'm gonna go right back here, and then I'll come see you.
Hello, I'm Phyllis Rose, and I'm a California native, so there is one here. And I can tell you that the casinos are struggling. I can tell you that they're trying to preserve what's going to happen for the children and their children to come. I mean, this is a one-time shot, and we don't know how long it's going to last. I'm an out-of-work actress who's been in the Screen Actors Guild for over 10 years. And if it wasn't that I had an education, lucky for me, I wouldn't be able to make it. I mean, I've done a lot of other work. I've been a publicity assistant for KCTV and worked in radio. I'm trying not to get emotional. I'm going to make a change right now. Gregory said it earlier. I'm going to ask that every writer that writes something, just write in any role, anything that you can for a Native American man, woman, child. I work with the Native American youth, and I want to tell you that we have a lot of problems still. We don't have any role models for these kids. And we have the highest rate of domestic violence, drug and alcohol addiction. It's not getting any better. And we need role models, desperately. So I'm going to ask that anyone who works on a computer put out a blog or something and just say, write a role for a Native American today. And I want to thank y'all for being here. And I'm sorry, it's just kind of a lot of things that I wish I could just put a magic wand over the room and say, we're all equal in all of our work. So just let us have that little chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kevin Beckman.
I have two comments. One is there's some good news that the Kate Shugak mystery series in Alaska just got sold to a production company, and they're trying to sell it into a network. But it's not only a Native series, but it has a woman in the lead, and they're great stories. Also, I wanted to encourage everybody that the LA Skins Fest is coming up November 20th through 22nd. It's all free, all Native American films. And I have a film there, and it's a tribute to natives in Hollywood. It plays Sunday night at 7 o'clock at the Autry.
What were the dates on those again?
It's on the list on the back.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I think it's the 20th through 22nd?
I think it's the 20th or the 22nd.
Yeah. It's got the website on there.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Yeah, hi. My name is Norman Stevens, and I'm representing Evergreen Films that has just made the deal with Dana Sabanoff to acquire the Kate Shugak novels, which people have been chasing for since she's been writing them. And the reason Dana is trusting us.
Could you stand up, please?
I beg your pardon?
Could you stand up, please?
I'm sorry. The reason Dana's trusting us with her material is that Evergreen Films has planted its flag, creative flag, in Anchorage, Alaska, in a very big way. And no one except our company has promised her that this entire production would be shot in the state of Alaska. And as I'm sure Brian knows, being an Alaskan,
and I'm a born-again Alaskan. I actually live in Reno, Nevada, which I just might say it is Nevada, not Nevada. And Reno, Nevada is as diverse a community as you would ever want to meet. And I say that as someone who lived in Los Angeles and was in the community here for 25 years. But the state of Alaska also has probably the most attractive tax rebate program, incentive program for filming in the country that will now match anything that Canada has, the best of what Canada has to offer. And like her or not, a very good friend of the film industry is Sarah Palin, and she signed this into law before she left as the governorship. So it's a gift to the film industry in the state of Alaska, and it's now available and operative, and we hope to bring the Kate Shugak novels to the screen, to television as a dramatic television series. And I think that anyone who knows Dana Stabenoff's work, you could not find more diversity within the pages for novels. And Kate Shugak, the lead, deals with all of the conflicts that you've been talking about. How do you preserve your native heritage? How do you respect it? Her grandmother, who's active in the native local corporation. The native corporations are important characters in all of these stories, and all of this we hope will be dealt with in a very honest way. And I'm here this week working with the Evergreen people, and we think Alaska is going to lead the way and could lead the way in telling great Native American stories.
That's great.
Fantastic. I'm very glad to hear that. The new movie, The Fourth Kind, just opened that was set in Nam but not shot there. Don't even get me started. I'm going to run out. I'll be back. See, there's a hand over here.
Hi, I'm writer-director Tracy Britton, and I had a similar experience in an odd way. I recently directed a short film for a producer who told me, geez, I wish I could have found you a couple years ago. I looked for a female action director for 2 years, and I couldn't find any, which I thought was really odd. And I totally agree with you, Nancy, in that it's about the casting directors. When I was directing a show one time, it was a role of a realtor. It was a good role, and the casting director brought me black, white, Latino, Asian, old, young, male, female, and every one of the actors was great. I was like, this is the best casting opportunity as a director I've ever seen in my life. I was just blown away by that because it wasn't about who or what you were, it was about your talent. And I think that's the way casting directors should go. But my question actually is for you, Angela. I'm fascinated by the idea of tribal law versus regular American citizen law. And if there's in your story a crime committed on tribal land, is the trial system the same as it would be in the state level, or is it a totally unique kind of situation?
You've managed to ask the most complicated question in all of Indian law, but it's a very good one. I won't go into all the nitty-gritty. Let it suffice to say that in general, the way that criminal law works in Indian country is that criminal law is handled tribally, internally. When it's the only area in criminal law in the United States where your race matters. If it's Indian on Indian crime, if the defendant, the person who allegedly committed the crime, is an Indian, even if they're not a tribal member, they're a member of another tribe, the tribe has jurisdiction up to a certain level, then the federal government does. States have jurisdiction when it's a non-Indian on non-Indian crime in Indian country. It's incredibly complicated, and it's made more complicated by the fact that there are certain states that are called public law 280 states, which means the state actually gets to take over criminal jurisdiction, and California is a public law 280 state. So I teach Indian law, and this is the subject that is the most confounding to my students and to people in general, because it's the only place in the United States where in Indian country where you tie criminal justice and what kind of justice you get to the race of both the defendant and the victim. And then in addition to that, in terms of whether the court system looks the same, it doesn't have to look exactly the same, because the Constitution's Bill of Rights doesn't apply to us by the federal Constitution's very nature, but it applies to us in some respects by statute. the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968, but there's no federal court review of tribal court decisions that are criminal in nature unless it's a habeas corpus petition, meaning someone's been being held by their tribal government. So it's incredibly complicated. It's the kind of thing that you would need a consultant on if you're going to do criminal law kind of thing in Indian country. But it does raise a lot of really fascinating, I think, fascinating complexities with criminal justice, and in particular, I think one of the things that outsiders find particularly fascinating is that criminal justice in Indian country, although there's a wide range, tends to be more focused on restorative justice and reparations, meaning trying to integrate people back into the community and sort of help families make peace with each other after a crime's been committed, rather than going through the retributive system that you see in sort of the typical Anglo model. But that's not universal. There is a wide range. But that is one of the components that people tend to find very interesting, is that sometimes the way justice is meted out in Indian country is about, okay, we're all living here on the same land and our families know each other for hundreds of years. How do we make it work where we can keep living together? Rather than how do we remove this person from the community and incarcerate them, though both are employed in a variety of ways.
How about that, Nancy?
I'd like to address. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to address what you just said about as well. I'm sorry. There you are. I'm looking at her. About casting directors and how do you get them to? Well, I love your word. It's such a wonderful word. How do you empower them to do that? What would you do? I could raise the issue as well, but what would I do to make them feel like they have control of that and they're part of that? Include them with it rather than challenge them to do it. How would you facilitate that? How would you enhance that experience for them?
I make it a point as a director, when I first get to be casting director, is to say,
and I've done this for many years. I grew up in Washington, D.C. originally, which has an extremely loud African-American population, and I have to tell you, when I first went to Los Angeles, I was like, where are the black people? I was shocked at how few black people I saw in Los Angeles. I was like, what? Because I lived in Huntington Beach at that time. I was like, I've lived here a year. I have not seen one African American, and that is the truth.
I think you answered your own question.
But suffice it to say that, in answer to your question, I make it a point when I meet with my casting director is, I love diversity. Please bring me the most diverse cast you possibly can. Whether it says in the script, African American, Latina, whatever, I want to see everybody, because of that example of that casting director that did that without me asking was such a great experience and such an eye-opener for me, even though I like to think that I've always been a proponent of diversity. That's what really sealed the deal for me, and I think as directors, all of us in this room, and writers, I think it's with any ethnicity. If you put that after your description, I see that in casting, the casting director breakdowns, thank you. It'll say any ethnicity, please send any ethnicity. I think we as writers and directors have to specify that, because the powers that be don't think in those terms. And they would probably be happy if everybody in the entire show was white. So it's up to us to make sure that, I want to see, mix it up a little bit, please.
It's absolutely true, because if everyone will go, I'm not a racist, I'm not prejudiced, I believe in diversity. But unless you make it a point, it won't be done. And even if you make it a point, all of a sudden 4 months have gone by, and I'm going, I don't see any diversity on my crew, And so you have to do it again, and you have to do it again. So
which brings me to another thought for the people that are in this room, not necessarily just the writers. Think about this. If these are the things that you want to happen, how do you make these things, these thoughts, these processes be something that's part of the casting director's experience on a continuous basis without bugging the hell out of them? That's,
I think we need to write a lot. Every diverse writer, and non-diverse writer needs to try to write more roles, not only on, TV for those, the larger roles that we're shooting for, but also, I'd say the bad news right now is money's tight and, our business model, no one knows where it's going. The good news is there's so many cable outlets where you can get very specific stories that you never would have been able to do. Mad Men doesn't get made 30 years ago, And I'm amazed at some of the younger filmmakers, the stuff that you can do now for very little money. Our guy Steve Judd back there on our committee is, he's shooting a film, next week for very little money, a native film that's going to be awesome. We need to showcase all of our diverse actors, because we need to empower those casting directors and say, to the showrunners and the casting folks, look, here's somebody who has a reel. I wrote this for them. They kick butt at it. They can do it on our screen here. Because a lot of times, we were saying chicken and egg. If you don't have all of those credits, if you don't have 5 roles you can show, some of those folks, it's really tough to get that job because they don't want to roll the dice, And in their defense, I think a lot of us have seen sometimes when they've gambled on an unknown actor and, it's caused big troubles, or gambled on an unknown director. So, because at the end of the day, it's their blood on the line for, this $50 million bet that a network studio has placed on your show. So they don't want to mess that up.
Reason to be cautious, absolutely.
Yeah. However, I will say I've been in situations where when your lead actor comes in and says, I know this guy that I used to work with, and I'd like him to have this role. You don't have to watch the reel. That person has his job, so,
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning, I'm going to speak about an industry I really know nothing about. I feel like a convert now. Maybe I'm going to give up my job as a professor. But I think it's also worth reiterating the point that Nancy made so beautifully, which is that it's not diversity for diversity's sake. We have to do the same thing in academia. It's not diversity just so we can look out and I can look at my students and see faces that are not white. It's diversity because it makes the product better. Like, that's the point that people have, is that it makes the product better. It's more interesting. It's more real. It's funnier. It's more interesting. It's more compelling because it's more real. And if you make the product better, then you're speaking their language, because it's all about making money, right? And people want a product that's going to sell. So I think the point, sometimes I think when you use the language of diversity, powers that be start to shut down a little bit and feel like diversity, blah, 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 yes, diversity, blah, blah, blah. But what you have to show them, it's not for its own sake, it's because you're actually going to make the product better and more compelling, more interesting, and that benefits everybody, right?
And they say history runs in loops, and like everyone in town knows, NBC is struggling right now. And how many years ago were they struggling in the '80s? And then they rolled the dice on Bill Cosby, because they were open enough to take that chance, and that was really cool for me growing up and seeing that. That ended up saving their network. Everything they built, was on that. There was no must-see TV without him laying the groundwork there. So it's like, now here we are where networks don't know what's going to happen, roll the dice, take the chance, because it works and it makes better stuff.
Here's how this is going to help you. Again, we said something earlier about actors, and I was saying, if you don't want to be a representative of people, if you don't want that responsibility, who does? Who wants to be looked at for something you may not be able to do? Just think of it on a selfish basis. What am I going to get out of this? If I go into the community and help the community, what am I going to get out of this? Well, if the community starts doing this and doing that, and that starts doing this, all this acting stuff that starts getting out there, and they're looking for other people, et cetera, is all going to come right back to me. So it's another way of approaching somebody who says, why should I do that? Because inevitably, what you were just talking about, this is going to benefit you. It's going to benefit what you do, you personally, people around you. So there's again, another argument for diversity.
One other angle on the casting issue, the SAG American Indian Committee is going to try, coming up here in our next push of stuff to do, to actually get agents together and educate our own agents. Because often they don't remember their native clients unless it says, TP woman or, whatever. They need to be pushing us, to play the doctor, to play the detective, whatever. They need to get in there and be bugging the casting directors and say, hey, I got some talent here. Check it out.
And hammer home that we are contemporary people. Contemporary those roles. My wife and I, my son just started kindergarten. My wife is Navajo. We went into open house night, school to open, and we're looking around, and they have the big A is for B is for C. There's a felt giant I with TP Indian, I is for Indian, and my wife just looks at me, and I'm like, okay, you're going to take this one or mine, which, because it's just, and we deal with this all the time. But the amazing thing is, we're just saying, it's so easy. You would never put I is for Italian. You never put M is for Mexican and have somebody up in these, but we're frozen in time. And, I is for Italian. You could do that. But the thing that struck me was all those 5-year-old kids, and our kid is the only native in that class, but all of them at 5 years old know that archetype. It's a frozen Indian in time. And we're handling it with grace, and you got it. You know, my wife was like, these 5-year-old kids are going to learn I is for indigenous, and I don't care if they can't spell it. But rebranding, folks. Yeah. There it is. Well done. But we have to handle that and just bang that drum. We're contemporary. We're here. We're modern.
Okay, we're going to have time for 2 more questions, and then what I would like to do is give the panel just a minute each to just recap something you didn't say, something you want to leave the good people with. So, yes. Okay, I'm going to go to this gentleman first.
Hi, my name is Stephen. I am a writer. I'm a producer and happily a recovering actor. Originally from New York, where I started with stage work, and April Webster has actually hired me twice. So I'm proud to say that I actually know somebody that has been at the forefront of trying to bring diverse groups in, even when she was working stage work with Hughes Moss Casting 20 some odd years ago. But back then, about 20 some odd years ago, there would be casting notices, EPAs, equity principal auditions, listed, and it would say all ethnicities encouraged to audition. And nobody of color would show up at the 600 people at an open cattle call. Now, Actors Equity in New York started making some huge strides and encouraging more diverse populations to audition for things, and you started to see shows on Broadway begin to diversify. I moved out here 5 years ago and tried to mount a reading of a sitcom pilot. Every single character was written as any ethnicity in the breakdowns. 2 women, 55 plus, any ethnicity. A hot looker, female, 20s, any ethnicity. I had exactly 2 African Americans and 1 Latina apply through the entire cast of 6. I have to tell you, it's not just that there isn't a pool, it's that people aren't putting themselves out there. And as long as there are folks from SAG here, I have to tell you, there's strength in numbers, and SAG has numbers the same way Equity did within the stage world in New York. And if you get the message out, more and more people will do what I did, but you have to encourage people who might be right for roles to put it out there. If I say any ethnicity, I mean it. I had a role that could have been either gender, and only men applied. I was horrified, honestly, and my point is, please encourage your friends to get their faces out there so that there are faces we see that we want to see again. Because there are, 7 people stood up and said they were actors in this room? There's got to be more. Get your friends out there. Tell them, be seen, be heard. Join these groups. There's a diversity group at the Television Academy. I'm sitting with 2 of the chairs. I happen to be a member. I'm very proud of that. And we constantly are looking behind the scenes, in front of the cameras, to try to encourage people to get themselves out there. There's strength in numbers, and I think what the Writers Guild is doing with this group is awesome. And Screen Actors Guild, get your faces out there, put your pictures on everything, and people will know you are there and ready. That's all I have to say.
One last question. I'm sorry. You'd already, so there's a hand over here? Yes. So you had your hand up earlier. So.
Well, just quickly, I wanted to say thank you. I think it's so cool that you come out and inspire us. I'm always inspired by the diversity, Kim and Terry's programs. But at any rate, I'm looking for role models myself for the youth, and I found one in Sacagawea, and I started writing a script, and I researched it for years and years, and I wrote it as an MOW, and I wrote it as a TV series, and I wrote it as a feature. I'm actively looking for anybody who wants to help me produce. I have a couple of, it's sort of turning into a pitch, but I'm looking for the Sacagawea who will play. I've been forced to look at other actors. If it's a Hollywood movie, I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm a producer, and I'm being pushed into Demi Moore's daughter and things like that. And I really don't want to go that route. But if anybody, I'm opening it to you. If anybody knows anybody that could play the Sacagawea, she kicks, she gallops, she fishes, she does everything you can imagine in the script. Physical, it's extremely physical. Come forward, produce with me. That's all. Thank you, Kate, for letting me say that.
I'm going to introduce you to Marjorie Tannen over here right after, and we can hook up that.
Teenager, right? She starts out as 12 and ends up as 16.
Can I just say one thing? The Screen Actors, I'm kind of loud, so you really need it. The Screen Actors Guild has a list of Native American Indian actors. And so that's like a really great resource for you because, yeah, absolutely. And, pardon?
My script was read there at the Screen Actors Guild, selected, and I still didn't find, it wasn't that forthcoming. So anyway, I'm just putting it out there. Anybody knows anybody.
I'll give you some information.
There you go. Okay. There you go.
We're running over our time a little bit. What I would like to do now is give each of you just a chance for a final thought. Greg, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I pretty much said everything I needed to say. I'm very happy. I mean, I could go on forever. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be said. I'm actually kind of surprised at myself that I'm here and starting to get back involved again because I got real jaded for a long time and wanted nothing to do with a lot of this. And trust me, that happens too. It really happens, man. Sometimes this stuff wears me out. But I'm starting to, my eyes are getting less unfocused and less cataract. It's so nice to see this happening. It's so nice to see so many people here. It's really important what you're talking about, what you're doing. It's nice to see that ball start to roll past all that stuff. So thank you.
Angela touched on something. There is a backlash about diversity. And you bring up, if you specifically bring up diversity, unless you're the boss, you're gonna get rolled eyes, you're gonna get, and there are other ways to do it. There are backdoor ways. And those are just, the result's the same. So I caution, when you lead with that, it can turn a lot of people off. But there are other ways to get around that. So don't forget about that too.
Well, I guess just in closing, I would say I'm honored to be on this panel and to be among all the people here, and especially strong Oklahoma girl. I appreciate that so much. In closing, I just want to give a little bit of an optimistic outlook. I feel like in my work all the time, the tenor of the conversations, people are surprised that American Indians are still here. But we're still here, and we're going to be here in the future. And I feel like the future is an incredibly bright time for Native people. So I just want people to not lose that hope and to think about that there's incredible opportunity out there, despite some of the forces that are working against us all. This is a brighter future than most of our grandparents would have ever imagined. And so there's really incredible things that we can do. And it's wonderful just to see an audience filled with so many wonderful people, but so many Native people. So Chimegwech to you all. Thanks.
I guess I would say my first message would be to within our own community. This is to, our Indian creative folks, all our diverse creative folks. We're in there trying to make things happen, but work your craft, hone it. Whether it's you're an actor, you're a writer, you're a director, bust your butt. Approach it like you're going to an NBA tryout and you're trying out against Kobe Bryant, because those are, that's basically what we're doing. We need to be ready for those opportunities when we fight to create them. I guess I said I had three big things. One of them is we're not all rich from gaming. Number two thing is contemporary. We are contemporary people. We respect our past, but we're here in the present, moving forward. The third thing is we're not a monolithic folk. Indians are so diverse, and there's great story there. I just draw from myself. I'm Blackfeet. My wife is Navajo. They are as different as Spanish and Swedish culturally. You know, we are patrilineal, they are matrilineal. The woman is in charge. If you get divorced when you walk home and your Navajo wife has put your saddle outside, and that's what you get. You know, that's coming from, you know, my culture where you know, men were in charge and you used to have multiple wives. So there's a great story there, because big love is not happening at the Gavin household. My wife has been firm about that. But yeah, and to our non-Indian folks, we really appreciate you coming out. Anytime we've made any progress on any of these issues, it's taken allies, good-hearted people working together. And you know, off saying we're not a monolithic people, one universal value that Indians have is the idea of sharing, whether it's power, you know, whether it's possessions. That's a really sacred thing to us. And so we appreciate you coming out and sharing your time. And, you know, we're coming up on Thanksgiving when we shared food and, you know, real estate with folks. And what I guess what I'm saying is, you know, what we're asking for is give us a little real estate on the storyboards in the writer's room. Give us a little real estate, you know, in the casting agencies. Give us a little real estate, you know, in your minds when you're thinking of things, because ultimately that's going to enrich us all. It's a great tapestry we call America, and, you know, and we're a colorful thread in it, and it's, you know, it's a beautiful rainbow when it comes together. So thanks for coming out, guys.
Absolutely, and to follow up on that and all the things that have been said, like I said at the outset, we're not here to complain. There's lots of problems. We're not representative. No, we're just here to open the door, show what a beautiful, wonderful, surprising modern world of people that we have. There are television networks struggling right now. Hey, look at this. This might help freshen up some material on TV. They're hurting. The times when the TV networks are hurting, like you're talking about NBC, are also directly precede their greatest flowerings. And I don't know when it will be, but sometime we're going to be in there on that. Not because of diversity, you know, that word that just deadens people's eyes, but because, whoa, look what these people are doing. How cool is that? Mm-hmm. Help me thank our panel. And thank you.